Good afternoon, students.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, right. Are you hearing my voice?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, in the last class, we have certain things over the domestic architecture of Indus Valley civilization. And today, we will see certain things regarding the basic things regarding the social differentiation and also the economy. Okay, so the economy of Indus Valley civilization. Okay, so before going to those things, I have to share my screen and then I give you the things along with my screen. Okay, so the tracking social differences and certain differentiation or the division, particularly in the society of ancient, in the Indus Valley civilization. Okay, so you are well known that every civilization has certain sources. Among them, uh, definitely we depend on particularly on the archaeological sources. Okay, so every artifact or every monument or every burial give you a lot of things regarding the civilization. Okay, so burial give you the things what basically the things which attach to particular person or a citizen. Okay, so who lived in a particular civilization. Okay, so in the same way, you can differentiate uh, certain things, basically the things, particularly in the society, Indus Valley society, on the basis of the burials which executed in the Indus Valley civilization at various sites. Okay, so archaeologists generally use certain strategies to find out whether there were social or economic differences among the people living within a particular culture. And these include studying barriers. And you are familiar with the massive pyramids of Egypt, and some of which were contemporaries with the Harappan civilization, and many of these pyramids were royal burials. Okay, so we already discussed the things while we having a lecture over the ancient Egyptian civilization. Okay, so in the ancient Egyptian civilization, we discuss certain things regarding the pyramids, and pyramids were such a places where you will get the things which adjoining or which attach it to particular pharaoh or various pharaohs, because these pyramids were certain like a storehouses or like a burial places or like a graveyard or like a temple which the people of ancient Egyptians has followed. Okay, so by following these pyramids, you get lot of things. Okay, so among them, how the first of all you will see by observing the pyramid, you can know you easily know that how the pharaoh was the status of the pharaoh first of all, and by following certain things in the pyramids, you will get the strength of that pharaoh, and you will get the relation with the pharaoh, with the other people in the society, and kingdom or civilization. Okay, so such things you will see, and the economical aspects, and the social relation, and also the political strategies also you will get by following such pyramids in the particularly Egyptian civilization. Likewise, in the Indus Valley, you also get the things by following various burials, and you have different types of burials also. Okay, so and here many of these pyramids were royal burials and where the enormous quantities of wealth was buried. Okay, so yet burials in the Harappan sites, the dead were generally laid in pits, and sometimes there were differences in the way the burial pit was made in some instances. Okay, so the followed out spaces were lined with bricks, and the followed out spaces were lined with bricks, and these can you can follow by various things also. Okay, so some graves contain pottery and ornaments, and perhaps indicating a belief that these could be used in the afterlife. And jewelry has been found in burials of both men and women. And in fact, in the execution cemetery in Harappa in the mid 1980s, an ornament consisting of three shell rings, a jasper, a kind of semi-precious stone, a bead, and hundreds of micro beads was found near the skull of a male. In some instances, the dead were buried with copper mirrors, but on the whole, it appears that the Harappans did not believe in burying precious things with the dead. And when you see, there are certain things how the people of Indus Valley they looking for luxuries, and another strategy to identify social difference is to study artifacts, which archaeologists broadly classify as utilitarian and luxuries. The first category includes objects of daily use made fairly easily out of ordinary materials such as stone or clay, and these include squares, pottery, needles, needles, flesh, rubbers, etc., and are usually found distributed throughout settlements. And archaeologists assume objects were luxuries if they are rare or made from costly, non-local materials or with the complicated technologies. Thus, little pots of yams, a material made of ground sand or the silica mixed with the color and a gum and then filed. Okay, so were probably considered the precious because they were difficult to make. Okay, so you are watching a fiance pot on the screen also. Okay, so the situation becomes more complicated when we find what seem to articles of daily life. Okay, so daily use uh, and such spindle wheels made up of rare materials such as PNs. Okay, so if we study the distribution of such artifacts, you will get those particular things like okay, so such if we study the distribution of such artifacts, we find that rare objects made up of valuable materials are generally concentrated in large settlements like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and are rarely found in the smaller settlements. When you see it as a example, some miniature pots of faience perhaps used as perfume bottles, are found mostly in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and there are none from small settlements like Kalibangan. And gold too was rare, and as at present, probably precious. All the gold jewelry found at Harappan sites was recovered from the ports. Okay, so when you see the crop production, locate Chanhudar, it's like a, when you see the map of Sanhudar, uh, you see certain things where a tiny settlement within the 7 hectares was compared to the Mohenjo-daro. Mohenjo-daro is a large settlement. It's about 100 hectares. Okay, so the almost exclusively devoted to crop production, including bead making, shell cutting, metal working, seal making, and weight making also. And the variety of materials used to make beads is a remarkable one. And stones like carnelian, which a beautiful red color, and jasper, crystal, quartz, and steatite, and metals like copper, bronze, and gold, and shell, peons, and terracotta are world clay. Okay, so such beads were made of two or more stones cemented together, and some of stone with gold caps also is. And the shapes were numerous: disc shape, cylindrical, spherical, barrel shape, segmented. Such shapes you will see. Basically, these are various shapes. Okay, so some were decorated by incising or painting, and some had designs etched into them also. Okay, so when you see the other things like the techniques for making beads differed accordingly according to the material. Statite, a very sharp stone, was easily worked. Okay, so many material which made up of statite was which executed from various sites. Okay, so statite, one of the important material they used. Okay, so some beads were molded out of a paste made with the statite powder also. This permitted making a variety of shapes, unlike the geometrical forms made out of harder stones. And how the statite micro bead was made remains a puzzle for archaeologists studying ancient technology. And archaeologist experiments have revealed that the red color of carnelian was obtained by firing the yellowish raw material and beads at various stages of production. And nodules were shipped. Sorry, nodules were chipped into rough shapes and then finally flaked into final form. And grinding, polishing, or drilling completed the process. And specialized drills have been found at Chanhudaru, Lothal, and recently at Dholavira. Okay, so these are certain sites by through where you get numerous things basically, which numerous things which related to the technology, which the ancient Indus Valley people are used. Okay, so and these when you see the Nageswar and Balakot, you will notice that both settlements are near the coast, and these were specialized centers for making shell objects, including bangles, ladles, and inlay, which were taken to other settlements also. And similarly, it is likely that finished products such as beads from Changodaro and Lothal were taken to the large urban centers such as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Okay, so when you identifying such a centers of production, in order to identify centers of crop production, archaeologists usually look for the certain things like raw material such as stone modules, stone nodules, whole shells, copper ore, tools, unfinished objects, rejects, and waste material like that. So, in fact, waste is one of the best indicators of crop work. For example, if shell or stone is cut to make objects, then pieces of these material will be discarded as waste at the place of production. So, on the basis of those waste material, you can identify such things, such things, what the people had made, what the people made such article or a finished good. And sometimes larger waste pieces were used up to make smaller objects, but minuscule bits were usually left in the work area. And these traces suggested that apart from small specialized centers, the crop production was also undertaken in large cities such as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa as follow. And when you see the strategies for procuring the materials, as a variety of materials was used for crop production, while some of such as clay were locally available, and many as stone, timber, and metal had to be procured from outside the alluvial plain. And terracotta toy models of bullock carts suggested that this was one important means of transporting goods and people across the land routes. And the riverine routes, along with the Indus and its tributaries, as well as coastal routes, were also probably used. When you see the materials from the subcontinent and beyond, the Harappans procured materials from crop production in various ways. If you see as an example, they established settlements such as the place at Nageswar and Balakot uh, in areas where shell was available. And other such sites were Shartugai in far off Afghanistan, near the best source of lapis lazuli. Okay, so a blue stone that was apparently very highly valued, and Lothal, which was near sources of carnelian, which is taken from the Barut in Gujarat, and steatite from South Rajasthan and North Gujarat, and metal, particularly like copper from the K3 mines of Rajasthan, like that. And another strategy for procuring raw materials may be procuring raw materials may have been to send expeditions to areas such as the K3 region of Rajasthan, what we discussed just before, region of Rajasthan, only for copper, and South India for gold. And these expeditions established the communication with local communities. And occasionally finds of Harappan artifacts such as steatite, microbeads in these areas are indications of such contact. There is evidence in the K3 area for what archaeologists call the Ganeshwar Jodhpura culture, with its distinctive non-Harappan pottery and an unusual wealth of copper objects. So it is impossible that the inhabitants of the region supplied copper to the Harappan. It's somewhat exaggeration. Okay, so you cannot have such sources to say also. Okay, so this is totally the region of Indus Valley civilization. Sorry, not only Indus Valley civilization, it's about the western part where from where the Indus Valley had a relation with other parts of the civilization, like the Mesopotamia and Dilmun. Dilmun and Magan, both are the two important places which better to be called as the middle or in between places through via the Dilmun and Magan, where these Indus Valley people were reached Mesopotamia. Okay, so and through the same regions also they also had the contact with the ancient Egyptian civilization also. Okay, so this is Meluha. Meluha is nothing but the Indus Valley. Through the Sukta gender, they entered in Magan, and with the Persian Gulf, they touched Magan and Dilmun. They entered in Mesopotamia like that. Okay, so this is the external trade route you can see. When you see the contact with distant lands, and recent archaeological finds suggest that copper was also probably brought from over on the southeastern tip of Arabian Peninsula, and the chemical analysis have been shown that both the Omni copper and Harappan artifacts have traces of nickel, suggesting a common origin. And there are other traces of contacts as well. So a distinct type of vessel, a large Harappan jar, you are watching on the screen, a Harappan jar which is found in Oman, in the territory of Oman, which is a large Harappan jar coated with a thick layer of black clay, has been found at Omari sites. And such thick coatings prevent the percolation of liquids, and we do not know what was carried in these vessels. But it is possible that the Harappans exchanged the contents of these vessels for Omani copper. It means it shows a clear-cut trade relation with the present territories of Oman. And Mesopotamian text datable to the 3rd millennium BC referred to copper coming from the region called Magan, and perhaps a name for Oman. And interestingly enough, copper found at Mesopotamian sites also. Okay, so contains traces of nickel, and other archaeological finds suggestive of long distance contacts include Harappan seals, weights, dice, and beads. In this context, it's a worth nothing that Mesopotamian text mention contact with the regions named Dilmun, probably the island of Bahrain, Magan, and Meluha, possibly the Harappan region. And they mention the products from Meluha, carnelian, lapis lazuli, copper, gold, and varieties of wood. And a Mesopotamian myth says of Meluha, may your bird be the Haja bird. May its call be heard in the royal palace. Okay, so some archaeologists think that Haja bird was the peacock. Did it get this name from its call? So it is likely that communication with Oman, Bahrain, and Mesopotamia was by sea, and Mesopotamian text referred to Meluha as a land of seafarers. Besides, we find the depictions of ships and boats on the seals. Okay, so you are watching a round Persian Gulf seal found in the Bahrain sometimes carries Harappan motifs. And interestingly, local Dilman weights followed the Harappan standard also. This is one of the sea you are observing. And next one below that, a seal depicting a boat. Okay, so on the side of the boat structure you are watching, which is also another important rectangular seal where you get from various parts of Indus Valley sites. And this is one of the signboard where you find these are certain letters on the ancient signboard. Probably get it is from the Rocky Gari, I think. Okay, so such signboards also you will get from various sites of the Harappan civilization. Okay, so as a part of economy and society, you can also get certain things like to say things through following the seals, script, and weights also. When you see the seals and ceilings of Indus Valley, and the seals and ceilings were used to facilitate the long distance communication. And imagine a bag of goods being sent from one place to another, and its mouth was tied with a rope, and on the knot was affixed some wet clay on which one or more seals were pressed and leaving an impression. Okay, so such which is you are watching on the screen a one type of sealing, which is if the bag reached with its sealing intact, it meant that it had not been tampered with. The sealing also conveyed the identity of the sender. Okay, so the seal had such a security or a protection, and no one can touch other than the people, the sender or the destination. Okay, so the people who get the article. Okay, so in between, no one can open, and by following such a seal, which the object can easily identify the receiver and also easily identify the sender also. Okay, so there are certain multiple use of these seal and sealings also. Okay, so and when you see an enigmatic script of this Indus Valley, Harappan seals usually have a line of writing, probably containing the name and little of the owner. And scholars have also suggested that the motif, generally an animal, conveyed a meaning to those who could not read. And most inscriptions are short, and the longest containing above 26 signs, although the script remains undeciphered. To date, it was evidently not alphabetical, where each sign stands for a vowel or a consonant. Okay, so as it is, it has just too many signs. Okay, somewhere between 375 and 400. Okay, so such a script which having the pictographic symbols. Okay, so this script was not yet deciphered, so that we have certain imaginary view on things what happened in the Indus Valley civilization. We cannot say exactly the things what happened at the Indus Valley civilization. Okay, so the symbols are also very numerous, nearly in the identified boards, you will get nearly 375 to 400 signs are like that. Okay, so it's not like a alphabet, but every figure which give you such a lot of things, lot of meanings. Okay, so it is apparent that the script was written from right to left, as some seals show a wider spacing on the right and cramping on the left, as the engraver began working from the right and then ran out of space. Okay, so it is right to left and left to right, which is such a complex or complicated script which the Indus Valley people are following. And consider the variety of objects on which writing has been found: seals, copper tools, rims of jars, copper and terracotta tablets, jewelry, bone rods, and even eminent ancient signboard. Okay, so such things you will get from these sites of Indus Valley civilization. When you see the weights, exchanges were regulated by a precise system of weights, usually made of a stone called chet, and generally a cubicle with no markings. The lower denomination of weights were binary 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, etc. up to 12,800. And while the higher denominations followed the decimal system, and the smaller weights were probably used for weighing jewelry and beads. Metal scale fans have also been found. So such things will get from the society of economy as a part of the economy. And before tomorrow, we'll see about ancient authority. And before completion of my lecture, and I have to give some more things. First of all, some more things regarding the easy understanding about Indus Valley economy, and then I will end up my class today. Okay, so I will give you those things like about Indus Valley civilization, economy of Indus Valley civilization, and then I will end up today's class. Okay, so first of all, I will give you about certain substance economy, and the people of these settlements subsisted with subsisted on agriculture and cattle rearing. However, they also practiced hunting and fishing, and several evidences indicate that Indus Valley people had a resonant interest in the trade. The main crops of the period include wheat, barley, lentils, and chickpea, etc. And skeletal remains from the sites suggest the presence of domesticated and wild animals in the sculptures. And the important domesticated animals were cattle, sheep, goat, buffalo, and pig. So all these things you are somewhat aware, because you have the things regarding Indus Valley in your lower classes are like that in the earlier classes. So the wild animals included boar, deer, and gharial, and the bones of fish, waterfall, turtle, and rodents were also discovered from the settlements of uh, Indus Valley. When you see the agriculture along with the pastoralism, this cattle rearing was the base of Harappan economy, and the granaries discovered at the sites like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and Lothar served as the storehouses of the grain, and we do not have any clear evidence of tools used for agriculture. However, the furrows or the plough marks have been observed in a field at Kalibangan, and these indicates Kalibangan, and these can indicates the flour cultivation like that. And a terracotta flour has also been reported from Barawali in the Hisar district of Haryana, and the irrigation was carried on a small scale by drawing water from wells or by diverting river water into channels or like that. Okay, so all these things you can get through the various artifacts which find in the various sites of Indus Valley. And the traces of canals have been found at Harappa, site of Shotiga in Afghanistan. And besides, water reserves found in Dholavira may have been used to store water for agriculture, and the chief food crops included wheat, barley, sesame, and mustard, lentil, and chickpea, etc. And the evidence for rice has come from Lothal and Rangapur in the form of husks embedded in the pottery and certain furrows. Okay, so and the millets have also been found in the sites of Gujarat, and cotton was another important crop. A piece of woven cloth has been found at Mohenjo-daro. So, based on this, you can easily say that the cotton which followed by the Indus Valley people. And apart from the cereals, fish and animal meat also formed a part of the Harappan site. Okay, so these are such important seals, terracotta figurines. These can give you a lot of things like uh, these one is the structure of bullock carts where they use. Next one is a humped bull, and another one is a carrier through where these material from one place to another has taken place. Okay, so shifted this material. Okay, so and apart from these, we already discussed in the last class about these things, and there is another important thing: granary as a part of economy. Granaries played an important role. So, where the people of Indus Valley store the food grains. Okay, so food grains for future is one of the remarkable feature from the ancient, Indus Valley civilization. Okay, so you find number of series of granaries at Harappa and a great granary at Mohenjo-daro. Okay, so and such granaries give you the insight or their future the storing of food grains for future, which is a great thing. You can also see from the Indus Valley civilization. Okay, so and this is a series of granary which is reconstructed nearby in the Harappa, and the burial practices, which is also the dead bodies were generally rested in north-south direction with their head towards north and the feet towards the south. The dead were buried with varying number of earthen pots. Okay, so these are like social and also economical things by which you can identify the status of people of Indus Valley civilization. Okay, so this is about such an certain things, particularly about the economy of Indus Valley people. And tomorrow I will give you the social differentiation and social differentiation and political authority. Okay, so I will give you these things in the tomorrow's class, and uh, this is end of my class today. You have any doubts regarding the Indus Valley economy, agricultural, non-agricultural economy, and trade and commerce, or external trade or internal trade? You have any doubts or clarification? Now you can welcome to ask. Students are hearing.
Yes, sir.
Any doubts regarding my class?
No, sir.
Okay, right. Okay, shall I end my class now?
Sir.